In this digital story, I am going to show the process of teaching 15 new English vocabularies to some students in the preschool level who their first language was Arabic. To teach these new words, I tried to use various strategies which were studied in the 3 different articles. The studies showed significant development in second language vocabulary acquisition by bridging the first language. Also, based on these studies, if students get repeated exposure in a meaningful context along with adequate explanation, they are prone to expand their vocabulary knowledge. To choose the new words, I tried to select the vocabularies which were easily illustrated and were unfamiliar to the students. Also, I tried to find out the books that the target words occurred at least twice in them. In the first day, I used a big-size book with some colorful illustrations to attract my students' attention. I started my work by evaluating the English vocabulary knowledge of my students. I wanted to select some words which were unfamiliar to them. After selecting the unknown words, I read the first chosen book to my students. I pointed at the picture of the new words while explaining about the meaning of them. I tried to explain those words instead of just having my students to memorize them. To teach the word of secret, for example, at first I defined the meaning of that word, then I asked my students to imitate the motion of that word to understand it deeply. In the second day, I tried to use my students' first language to define the words. Also, I applied auditory learning style to teach the new English words. The second day of my teaching started by assessing my students by asking the meaning of the words that they learned in the first session. After that, I read my second chosen book to my students and I told them the meaning of the target words in Arabic.
Groovy means Al-Jamil. Do you know Al-Jamil?
هو وزنه وحلو يخليهم حلو.
I also try to use the auditory learning style by encouraging my students to sing the written song in the book.
He kept on singing his songs. Sing, my buttons, my buttons, my three groovy buttons, my buttons, my buttons, my three groovy buttons.
In the third day, I used visual learning style to teach the new words. At first, I read my third selected book for my students and defined the meaning of the target words in Arabic. Then I explained the new words in English while showing the picture of the words to my students. One of my approaches to teach the new words by using visual learning style was bringing some devices in the class, like bringing some toys. To teach the word of beak, for instance, I brought a penguin toy and showed its beak to my students. After that, I asked them to draw the penguin's face on a paper. In the fourth day, I tried to use kinesthetic learning style to teach the 3 new words. To reach this goal, I asked my students to play a role to explain about the new words. To teach the words of snooze and sweep, for example, I asked them to pretend they are snoozing or sweeping. In the last day, I read the third chosen book for the third time in order to expose my students to the new words several times. After that, I helped my students to recognize the 3 new words in different contexts. Then I stuck the picture of the target words on the board and asked my students to match each picture with its word. And finally, I asked my students to know how many words they had learned through these 5 sessions. To reach this goal, I showed the picture of all 15 words and asked my students to name them. Interestingly, they named 11 words correctly. I think, in comparison with other words, they could better remember the words that I taught to them by trying to use their primary language and visual learning style.